Welcome back, everyone.
Yes. All right. Yep, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So, on to our final panel. I don't think anyone can hear me, can they? Hi, we're on. Some hush, please, for our final panel. Wow. So, that was quite a session, wasn't it? Definitely. We touched on, well, we always talk about the accessibility elephant. And we've got a mechanism for eating that now, haven't we? We talked about sponsorship, we talked about ownership, visibility, all of those ingredients. Lots about baking as well, wasn't there? Yeah. And all the ingredients to really build that structural sense of accessibility within large and complex organisations. So this last session is really reflecting on what are the lessons that we should be taking away as the accessibility community from that session. So I'm actually going to start with Kate. You were wrapped in that session. What are your takeaways that you would...
Wow, how long have we got? Midnight. Look, fantastic to be here, and as ever, just been dipping in and out of some fantastic sessions. And I speak always with some trepidation, being in a tech conference as a non-techie person. However, as an infiltrator, and to your question, the things that really strike me, so one, and it comes through from nearly every speaker, is the real value in setting up, sustaining and investing in employee resource groups, business resource groups and networks. So, you know, myself and the team, we have the great privilege of heading up PurpleSpace, the world's only network of employee networks around the world. And over 200 largely global businesses supporting 4,000 leaders. And together that community reaches 1.5 million employees with disability. And that really is just the tip of the iceberg. So the first is to really invest in those networks. And that might be, what do I mean by invest? It could be simply joining that network. You know, the stories of individuals on the last panel, for example, where as a natural ally, you come across those with lived experience that are prepared to share our truths in all of their vulnerabilities, and the things in this case that access to tech has enabled our lives to do. So simply join, be a member of. Second, it could be sponsoring that network or leading that network. And then lastly, it's about helping those networks to innovate and to push. I mean, you know, obviously ERG leaders rarely have the ultimate decision-making process within any business, but they sure as hell are now part and central to the decision-making process. So, you know, supporting those communities to innovate is really key, and that has come through in all of the sessions. I think the second is to find the storytellers within an organisation. For it will be the storytellers, it will be them who will change the world. And, you know, the wonderful saying from Brené Brown, you know, stories are simply data with a soul. And again, some fantastic stories through the course of this conference. And those tech leaders are usually those who are able to draw on a story of an individual or groups of individuals, again, or stories within their own family circle. So, you know, and when I say invest in storytelling, you know, sometimes you see organisations that do it once. It can't happen once or done. You have to sustain them. You have to keep them evergreen. You have to think about new ways of delivering unflinching truths in a way that tackles sometimes the deep-seated human resistors about driving disability culture change and really building that systemic change. I've seen it done in abundance. We've got Microsoft, BP, HSBC. You know, you're all great at investing in those storytelling campaigns. So I would very much encourage those. And I think lastly to your question, and that's for all of us. I'm conscious you have such a wonderful, rich audience, and you're all sitting in different places with different levels of seniority. I think for me it's about igniting that the curiosity, and to ask the very simple what happens when question. Because wherever we are, whether we're a senior business leader, whether we are a C-suite leader, or we are climbing up that pole, we all have the opportunity to ask the seemingly simple and innocuous question: what happens when? What happens when George loses his sight when he's using a piece of kit? What happens when Anna has losing her dexterity? So keep asking those simple questions to force those who have more, I suppose, say in what happens next. So anyway, I could go on, but I won't. You've got better panel members.
Okay, that's fantastic. And I think storytelling is key. And people retell stories, don't they? And they gather real momentum. And again, I think Ruth was saying about asking the same questions. You need to keep asking questions and asking the same questions. And then you hear other people asking your questions, and you know you're starting to really make that difference. Marley, so Jonathan talked about the vision and a clear vision for accessibility at HSBC. So I know that's been a vision that you've communicated and a statement and story that you tell again and again. What would you say are the takeaways from that panel that people in this room can take away and act upon?
Yeah, really good. You know, I think the thing about a vision is that it inspires people. It inspires people, however improbable it may seem. I remember when we coined that vision a few years ago, and it was more than 3 years ago. I don't think at the time we had an accessible website. You know, we didn't have an accessible website at the time, and you know, I said this last evening. People sat there in the room. I say people. There was one other person in the room, and he's still in the room, Rob right there. I think he thought I was half mad, right? But we knew we could do it. You know, we're the world's largest international bank. If we can't be accessible to everyone, then who can? And we've got to chip away. So we started with technology, and we're now branching out, whether it's physical, whether it's brand, whether it's communications, whether it's you know, how we procure goods and services. And I think it's really important that you just continue to build on that. Look, and you know, Hector and I were talking about communications over lunch today. It's really interesting because, of course, with technologists, you know, you put the tech in front of them and you get them curious and excited, right? That's a great way to draw people in. Speaking to a corporate communications audience about the importance of good inclusive comms was quite interesting. You know, I'm a lawyer by education. I worked in technology my whole career, and I was like, well, okay, this is interesting. So I got 10 minutes to convince our global communications community that this was something that they had to do. So what do we do? So I had a standard spiel. Some of you have heard it many times constantly. What is accessibility? Why is it important? And about 7 minutes into my talk, I deliberately went on mute and just continued to speak. Now, JC's boss, my ultimate boss, was in the room. And I remember thinking to myself, Marley, you've got to have big kahunas, right? Just keep speaking, because a bunch of people came off mute, and they're like, Marley, you're on mute, including our board member. He's like, Marley, you're on mute. Somebody said, can't we force this guy off mute? And I just kept speaking, pretend that I couldn't hear. And then about 10 seconds, which felt like 10 minutes, I pulled up a Word document, and I just started writing. And I said, I know I'm on mute. How did that make you feel? Frustrated, annoyed, angry. Welcome to the disability community's world. Each time you produce a piece of communication, whether it's a video, whether it's a social media post, or you send out a document, it's not accessible. For each of you who are frustrated today, now you understand what it feels like to be in somebody else's shoes for just a minute. So I think a vision is really important. It rallies an entire organization. It inspires people, not just within your organization, but actually we've got so many other people, so many fantastic brands here today that hopefully follow our lead. So a clear vision is a rallying cry. It's a source of inspiration, and also it's inspiring other parts of our D&I program. If the accessibility team can do it, why can't we?
Brilliant, thank you. Robin, I hear you bumped into Hector at the airport recently, and he had a captive audience to talk through his horizons. What did you learn?
I mean, I think so much of this is about empathy. This is about understanding where individuals are coming from, thinking about the fabric that they're operating in. So what's the organisation like? What are its drivers? How do you plug into that? But also, how do you creatively engage the minds of those executive sponsors? And I was thinking here about how's it kind of changing the way we're doing things. We wanted a big tech company recently to make a product for a specific audience. And I had this great conversation where someone said to me, look, you know what you could do is you could write a paper. And you could explain why the product's necessary. And I said, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a 50-second video instead. And I'm going to send it to the most senior people. And I'm going to see what they say. So I sent them the 50-second video, which I made in an airport, by the way. And they came back and said, yeah, this is good, this is great. And I said, look, I'm going to send you another one. And I said, I'm going to keep sending you videos. When it gets too much and it gets too difficult, just tell me to stop, and I will. So I sent them 9 videos. They sent me an email saying, look, we're making the product, right? And they made the product and launched it within about a year. Now, it's a different way of thinking about things. What you could do is you could go in and you could sit with people and write papers. People often don't read them. How can you tap in to the emotions of the people who are making decisions? But also, how can you make people think creatively? Think about the opportunity. All of us who've got a disability, one of the things we just don't sell is that we're born problem solvers. We really are. I told this great story the other day that I've got albinism, so I've had an uncorrectable visual impairment all my life. The hardest thing that people can ask me is, how much can you see? And what I say is, I'm a top letter guy, right? You go into the opticians, there's a chart. I can see the H at the top. I'm told there are other letters, I just can't see them. When I was 5 years old, my problem solving was, when you looked at the eye test chart, you were actually looking at a mirror. The chart was behind me. So I thought, when I enter the room, I'm going to have a little glance round. And I sat down. How are you doing, Robin? How's school? Actually read through the chart. Then I discovered that was a bad idea. Because the only person I was cheating was myself, right? So I had to think creatively. How'd you do things? And all the way through life, that's what I think we do as disabled people. We find life hacks. We find different ways of doing things. That incredible skill, which we all underrate, that's massively valuable at a business level. How do you respond to a challenge? Do things differently? How do you tap into where the decision points are in the organisation and creatively engage people so that they don't see it as a quote-unquote problem? It's a challenge. It's an opportunity. It's a business goal. And also, do you know what? It sits right at the heart of customer experience. Everyone's talking about that, yeah? Customer experience or customer obsession. Accessibility and inclusive design is right at the heart of it. So the more that we can create relevance and resonance, the more impact we'll have.
Definitely.
Can I reflect? Yeah. So the challenge we've got on that is we set like a North Star vision with our account teams. So it's like, I'll be sitting with your account exec soon, Marley, and we'll be saying, what's the North Star vision for HSBC on accessibility and how can we support you with that journey?
I'm holding you to
it's
that.
on camera now, so
very good.
Right,
very
okay.
good. All right.
But so that inclusive design imperative, that innovation imperative is there. But what you're not allowed to do is say we're going to go and shoot for that innovation without the rigor that Marley's attended to this organisation with. You get permission to do that with authenticity if you've got disabled voice in your organisation, you've got systems and policies and all that great hard work, frankly, Marley, right, isn't it? It's like this is the hard work that needs to be done. Then you get permission to do the innovation and roll back. We did some projects with some companies on awesome innovation stories that you may have heard of. And when I went to meet them, I met their employee resource group and they went, well, that's great that we're doing it, but it's terrible here. Like, I can't take my training. And it's like, it just pulls the rug out from what like the North Star that they're aiming for. So I think this Horizon methodology is there to kind of say to people, you've got to build a resilience in an organisation, not have a single goal of colleague experience. Like if you just stop at colleague experience and you're in retail, that's ridiculous. No, you've got to go and build accessible retail. You've got to have that North Star vision. So everybody needs to kind of see their part in the plan. And what Marley's story really says to me, and yours, Robin, is telling the right story to the right people. Like when you're speaking to commerce people, tell them the right, have the right fun with them to get, to drive their understanding and move them on to what is a deliverable the next time they're thinking it. We did the same with our UK comms team. Not your, I didn't do what you did, Marley. But we had the same. It was like, it's a social media post. Like, seriously, are you telling me adding alt text and adding video to a caption to video is unachievable? Of course it's not unachievable. Here's a Here's a policy, by the way, in case you're ever going to argue with me, which you're not going to. But you've got to say, here's a bite-sized chunk that's your job anyway that you can go after, and then people built their journey. If you've been to Microsoft's global events, we have audio description, we have everything, all the documents are accessible that are downloadable. We started with do the thing you can do tomorrow, social media post, but your long-term vision in your organization is the most accessible events in the world as an events organization, right? So telling the right story and having the right set of deliverables, the right maturity model with the right professional is, I think, the mistake we've been making.
Definitely.
Is that we've been trying, it's disability and accessibility, and we have that conversation, but we go in and we get randomised everywhere we go.
Well, it's contextualising it to people's role, isn't it? If you can recognise that it's something that's relevant and tangible that you can do, but going back to what Mel said about joining it up as well, it's also so important that it's not happening in silos, because otherwise people can sometimes be counterproductively pulling in different directions.
Think of it like this. We build an amazing accessible product, and then the social media team goes out and tweets about it in an inaccessible way. It's just
cringe.
it's just ridiculous. Yeah? It's cringe. It's a great word. Ick, I think, is the new word, isn't it?
You're down with the kids.
I have kids, that's all. But it's that. It feels weird if you do that, if you tell that story in context.
But unless you don't know. And I think that's the other thing. It's unfair to go after people if you haven't actually given them the lowdown on how it affects their work.
And this is why when I listen to the Valuable 500 and Purple and other organisations, you give us permission to get started. Yeah, it's like a CEO says something, good, we can now do something. Like the number of customers I've worked with where I meet their CIO, let's just pick a role at random, okay? I meet the CIO, and I tell them what their CEO has said about disability, and they're like, oh, hang on then, maybe I should do something. Well, it's your CEO's words, and he signed the Valuable 500, so maybe you want to help here, is a different conversation to, do you know what accessibility is?
Yeah.
Yeah? So it's, it's like, let's, as accessibility professionals, a lot of people in the room are, see the holistic picture around the organisations, not just the project you're working on.
Absolutely. Okay, Mark, I think we were going to go to the floor with some questions. Yeah, has anyone got any questions for our fantastic panel?
That's not good.
No, you've stunned them to silence. Well, I've got more.
I've got a question here.
Here we go. Yeah.
Not yet.
Hello. Oh, God. All right. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for an amazing day. I am completely blind and I'm here. I'm more on social media and I've really turned into accessibility because I care about it and I want to help others be passionate about it the way I am. But I guess my question is to you. As someone, so I'm an individual that's essentially created my own brand from asking brands and businesses to be more accessible because you guys are doing the best things in here. How do I get those people on board and signpost them to you or to others, or even give them a cheat sheet? So like today with the HSBC saying, I'm thinking of the banking industry at the moment because I've been asked to do a talk at NatWest, for example. So how do I get them to follow in your footsteps without making them feel that they aren't already doing a good job? And how can I help just promote what you guys are doing instead of constantly feel like I'm banging on people's doors and asking them to be accessible?
That's a great question. Anyone want to take that?
I feel like Marley should take it. So.
Very good, very good. You know, it's really interesting. I felt like I was in your position for many years, right? Banging the drum, trying to drive a topic that people quite often were indifferent to, if I'm being entirely honest. You know, it wasn't something that everybody wanted to do willingly. There was some arm twisting, some leg twisting, some neck twisting. I did a lot of twisting, right? I think, you know, quite often with regards to the community, we use the fear of negative consequence. And I think I'd suggest changing that to the opportunity and the art of what's possible. When we started inspiring people and changing hearts and minds, the number of difficult conversations we've subsequently had with those teams, with those individuals, has just changed. And one of the things I think that, you know, you can do is, you know, I do something really simple. I do it a couple of times a week with my own organization, partners, and as somebody calls them, brandos, right? I speak for other organizations, is, you know, show them the difference between something that's accessible and that's inaccessible and what that does to you as an individual. What does that mean for you as an individual? If you can then put that in the context of what that means for their brand and your inability to bank with them, travel with their organization if they're a travel company, or do any other thing, it takes a really difficult person to ignore you. So if I would offer some advice, I would say, what is the human impact of inaccessibility? I'm sure Kate and
a couple
my
of
panelists
extra.
would like to add to that.
I mean, firstly, congratulations, well done, and keep going. You know, it can be really hard to set out on a road as a sole trader, as a freelancer, and a huge congratulations to you. So some practical thoughts. One would be to encourage those who may be a little further away on the journey of change to team up with other great businesses that are doing good things. So organisations like Business Disability Forum, who make it easier for business to learn from each other and share best practice. So that would be my first little thought in terms of advice. I think secondly, you know, for yourself, you're probably already very well connected with other freelancers, and you know, the Shani's, congratulations, I can't help but say it myself, but the Power 100, and there's others I see around the room, so you're probably deeply connected, and forgive me if you're not, but it's a lonely business.
Yep.
You know, and I speak as someone, you know, who back in the day, a lobbyist. You know, you couldn't find me out of Whitehill or Westminster. Now you wouldn't dream of getting me back there for all the tea in China. You know, you can take the woman out of politics, you cannot take the politics out of the woman.
Yeah.
It's a lonely journey, so find your friendship circles and, you know, learn from the history, but notice it will be you, the leaders of the future, that will continue to take that energy into the forward, into the future. So keep going. That's my main message. And connect with BDF and the wonderful Lucy and her team.
Just to build on that, Hector, chastise constructively from a position of knowledge is really important. Like, people with disabilities need to know what accessibility is and how we build accessible documents. And there is a deficit out there. There's a deficit out there in terms of people with disabilities knowing what is an accessible document, what is an accessible social media post. Own that, own it, yeah? And then call people out on it in a constructive way. I'll tell you a very super quick anecdote. Robin, you'll like this. I have an MP who regularly gets messages from me, and we have a rule at Microsoft. This is being broadcast, but not broadcast on LinkedIn. Okay, I can tell this. All right. Like, we're allowed to engage our MPs, but not all MPs. You're allowed to engage your MP, all right? So my employer cannot stop me engaging my own MP, all right? That's rule number one, all right? My poor MP is all I have to say on this, right? So I remember I started a campaign on social which was like, no captions, no vote, right? Like, during the last election. Like, don't suddenly jump on modern technology MPs and, you know, try and get our vote, but not go through the rigor of making something accessible. Don't you dare, yeah? It was the kind of the upshot of it. It was fun. I had a lot of fun. And I learned two things. There are people who want to know it all and really want, like, oh God, I didn't even know, please help me. And there are the people who kind of go, what's it got to do with you, get lost. All right, so there's like, and accept it. Some people are not going to listen. Anyway, the story is, Robin, my MP, I'll help you afterwards with who it is, I'm not going to name her. She visited the RNIB on World Sight Day and didn't put alt text on her image. And I was like, what level of cognitive dissonance do you have? Yeah, this was an IM directly to my MP, where you visit a blind charity on World Sight Day and do not put alt text on your post when I have told you 400 times to put your social media accessible. And she came back to me and she said, and you will be predicting this already, oh, we've had a change of team, and maybe on the handover, this policy didn't get it. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm sure that's true. But anyway, re-educate again, but do it from a position where you know what you're talking about, and you can say, it's not difficult, yeah? And then ask them to go further. So go to your whole organization, make it a party policy. Don't just make it a personal policy, make it a party policy. But start with giving people who you engage with the opportunity to build their own personal policy on accessibility. I will do two things. I'll make my social media accessible, and I will put a footer at the bottom of my email that says, I know how to make a document accessible, and if you need this to be accessible, I'll make it accessible for you. Is a really good start. All right?
Fantastic.
Yep.
Any other questions from the audience? We've got a couple over here.
I'll tell you who it was afterwards.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if I can guess.
Hello, I'm Renaud. I work for Sony. This is a bank. This is my bank. I have a question about accessible money and accessible payment. If you could comment beyond contactless, what is your vision about that?
Okay, very good, very good. So, here in the UK, and I was with Sam Latif today, and she was just pointing out the physical element of money, right? I think there's a lot of excitement around technology, but we forget that actually there's a significant part of our society that still relies on physical cash. We've got some data, particularly around people from a certain economic background actually rely on cash more than more privileged members of our society. So I think we talk a lot about the future of technology and all the sort of wizardry that we're working on. But I think actually that paper money, we've got to make accessible. And actually one of the things that Sam just pointed out to me, which I was aware of, but actually it's not something I rely on, so it's not at the top of my mind, right? I'm a geek, I work on tech. One of the things we're going to do, and I'm making a promise here on camera, is we're going to take what we do in the UK and we're going to go to Hong Kong, right? Because actually in Hong Kong we print the money, literally. So tomorrow our CEO of HSBC Hong Kong is going to get an email from me going, hey, this is what we do in the UK. Can we do this in Hong Kong? I don't know how long it'll take. If I'm not at TechShare Pro, it's because I've made this commitment and the bank doesn't know it. I'll be looking for a job, maybe ask you some advice on how to freelance. But actually, it's really important actually that we start with the basics. Let's get that paper money accessible, right? And actually we can do it in Hong Kong. And I know our CEO, Luann, she's wonderful. She will help make that happen. When I think about sort of the future of banking and technology from an accessibility perspective, look, banks here in the UK, they do a good job. It's not just HSBC, right? It's not just HSBC. There are a lot of other fantastic brands doing great work, right? I think Paul was here, Paul Smythe from Barclays. Is Paul there?
There.
Oh, there you go, Paul. I fondly refer to Paul as the OG of digital accessibility in banking, right? He's a man that I used to follow when I founded this program, right? There are other banks doing great work, and I think we take that for granted sometimes. Yeah. When it comes to something as essential as banking, you must have a choice. It shouldn't just be Barclays or HSBC. And there's a customer of ours today who I met, and he's from the Middle East. Speak to him. He's from Dubai. He's sat just behind Shani, and he paid us a huge compliment. He said, "Look, Mali, actually in Dubai, I believe it may just be HSBC that I have access to, right?" And while I was really proud of that, it was very sobering, Because when it comes to banks, you should have more than HSBC. As much as I love this organization, and if you cut me open, I'll bleed hexagons. You should have more than HSBC. Where's the future of banking in this space? Look, I think there's a couple of things. Banks getting better. The regulation is changing. It's probably strange for you to hear from a banker. We want regulation, because it's not just banks. We're hugely reliant on partners. And it's imperative that our partners, our technology partners, big or small, share our values. And our message today, and I will say this, and I can say this, if you don't share our values, if you aren't going to be accessible, you will not count in our business in the future. You can take your business elsewhere, you can take your platforms elsewhere, because you will share our values, because ultimately these are our customers, and these are our people, so you will become accessible. So for me, the future is, I can talk a lot about the wizardry of technology, but the future for me is this just becoming normal. This should just be normal. We shouldn't require, the fantastic advocates in this room at times fighting for accessibility. This should just be normal. And for me, that's the future I look forward to.
Thank you. We had another question at the back there.
Thank you. Hi, Bryn from Sainsbury's. Thank you all for your insights. I was slightly in two minds to ask this question. I'm going to ask it anyway. What is your opinion on, and do you currently work within organisations that that have accessibility wrapped up into like financial incentive or bonus attached to or tied to bonuses for product owners and business owners?
Anybody want to take that one?
I have to take the financial out of it a little bit. Okay, so essentially every Microsoft employee, two things. 200,000 of us globally, every single Microsoft employee takes accessibility training. All right, it's mandated learning now. All right, so you can't say you don't know what it is. First starting point. All right, what is disability? What tools do people with disabilities use? And how do you build an accessible experience? And building an accessible experience is if you're a marketer, a product owner, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so table stakes with a build standard towards it. All right. After that, in our connects, we have a connect thing. So whenever we meet with our bosses, we all have to make a D&I commitment. And all I would say is, and obviously your performance is rated on your holistic connect, not just, including your D&I component. And so for a tech company to make D&I commitments, accessibility is a super easy one. Yeah, it's actually tangible and deliverable, and I can commit to that relatively easily. So I'm not going to say it's a kind of direct financial penalty or bonus or anything like that. But what I would say is there's a diversity and inclusion component that we as technologists could actually start to say more consistently and coherently. Our commitment to diversity and inclusion is a deliverable, and that deliverable is called accessibility.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to build on that?
Are you stopping bonuses at RNIB, Rob?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's all about how do you achieve change and how do you plug in to people's motivation. And, for me, it should sit in the same realm as security. So no one in an organisation would decide, let's not bother having any kind of security, or we'll turn off the firewall. Not going to do that. Accessibility should be in the same domain. It's a basic hygiene, isn't it? And it's also about people being gracious about their failures where it hasn't happened, or maybe where something's broken. Somebody who I'm not going to mention who it is said to me yesterday they were going to an event and the people arranging the event hadn't put on interpreters, right? And it happened. We've heard this sort of thing before, we all have, but it's about how do you pick yourself up from that and manage the situation that you're in. And there might be multiple ways to become motivated, to get people motivated and to keep them motivated. The key thing is that the understanding and the reason why people are making that change happens and is shared, and people actually plug into it. And also that it becomes a habit, right? So we're not just going to make something accessible and do it once. It needs to be ingrained as a part of the fabric of the organisation. So when we make something, we're going to build it accessible. There isn't a question about shall we make it accessible. The question is, how will we make it the best example of accessibility that we can currently achieve, right? Knowing that in 3 years' time, when we do a product refresh, we can go even further, right? because AI is enabling us to go further.
Yep.
It's enabling us to do more. Constant refresh, constant change, constant reflection. It's like that Japanese principle, isn't it, of Kaizen. It's like constantly looking to make things better. Once we fall out of that, we're resting on our laurels.
And it's a culture thing, isn't it? It's about, it being very much baked in as being a measure of success, whether financially or otherwise, that people are seen to be. Kate, did you want to?
Yeah, it is a great question, and it goes to the heart of what business is, and indeed public sector organisations are doing to ensure that it's part of the DNA, that things start to become a have-to around here. And while it's rare to see it in bonus scheme, but bonus schemes are invariably non-contractual. We do at PurpleSpace see it increasingly becoming the norm that in performance measures and in annual appraisals that there is often a diversity, equity and inclusion requirement. So I hope that answers a little bit in a positive way. We are seeing real movement. So not so much bonuses, not contractual. And given the world is, I don't think anybody's getting a bonus ever again. I'm joking. But it's absolutely, from where PurpleSpace sits, becoming increasingly the norm.
One of those sort of givens.
What are the have-tos around here? How do we put that moral compass? How do we insist that our people display the values that this business holds dear? So that is coming.
Anything from you, Marley, on that question?
Yeah, of course. So, look, when we judge the overall performance of our people, we look at two things, right? One of this hard performance metrics, and then how do you live your values, to Kate's point. Have we put this in people's bonuses? I mean, these guys are a lot nicer than I am. Yes, we put it in people's bonuses last year, right? That comms group of people, we gave them a score, and the entire function, and we said, and it came down from a board member, so including his performance rating, down to his entire function. If your comms aren't accessible to a certain score, and I think the score we gave the function as a whole was 95%. My team did random audits of comms collateral, from social media posts to press releases to various collaterals, documents, and we trained them. We gave them all the tools. We also allowed them to meet some amazing people to understand the importance of that. But yeah, we put that into their performance rating, and it was 10% of what they had to do. Now, look, we work in banking, right? There are different cultures in different industries, and how you motivate somebody in this industry might be very different to how you motivate somebody, say, in tech, the RNIB, so on and so forth. Do people like my team any less or more for it? Well, you'll have to ask them. Did we get the job done? Yes.
I was going to say, what was the impact?
We got the job done, right? And we got it done in a year, right? Something that would have taken a lot longer, we got done in a year. And guess what? This year, we've continued the accessibility of that. So, we want to move quickly, right? Look, the response to any sort of, and to be honest, to be fair, we didn't get any pushback. We did not get any pushback. I did not get a single staff member going, Marley, 10% of my remuneration from sort of, what we call our incentive scheme, I might lose because my team isn't accessible. I didn't get any pushback. There was a lot of genuine excitement. And my sort of response also, had there been any pushback, is very simple. Look, if you've got to communicate, your job is to communicate to 100 people. If you haven't communicated to 15 to 20 of those people, you haven't done your job, have you? Right? What we're asking you to do now is to ensure that you have made the right changes, the right accommodations, from the simple things like having, captions on a video, to ensure that everybody is able to get that message, understand it, consume it, and obviously respond to it. And if, as a result, we've got to incentivize people to get there faster, so be it.
Definitely, and it's linked to the vision, and sometimes you do have to come at people where it hurts, don't you, to really...
And to be fair, look, we gave people training, right? We train people constantly. I think we trained something like 700 people just on comms that year. And we also had an open door policy, which is at any point, If you, just because you couldn't make the training, or even if you had been to the training and you want to ask us as many questions as you like at any point, you could do that, right? So you were not without support. We didn't come, do some training, and exit left and go, look, you're now on your own. We publish a standard, we publish a policy, publish a toolkit. We have an open door policy. We had it then, we have it now, and we still run that training, and we still have people coming in. It's also part of our induction for any new member of our comms function. So they come in, they get taught about the brand, they learn about our tone of voice, and of course, how to make something accessible.
I think the important thing there, because we spoke about carrots and sticks this morning, didn't we? But actually, if you don't offer a helping hand and time and space for people to develop the skills to be able to action that, the carrot and the stick are a bit unfair, So yeah, as long as it comes with those elements, I think it's, so yeah. Oh, great, thank you. There we go, lots of different ways of going at it. So, but how are we doing for time?
We're up. We're
finished. I was looking for someone to tell me to stop, but...
That's me.
There we go.
So,
thank you.
What an amazing conversation. Wouldn't it be brilliant just to say thank you so much. Hector for bringing those horizons to us and helping us think about the speed at which we're going and where we are in our processes and the fact that we can take people with us. Wouldn't it be brilliant if we were all going to go upstairs and have a drink and a chat about what we've just heard and then have some entertainment? Wouldn't that be really nice? Because that's exactly what we're going to do. So you're going to go downstairs because you have to go downstairs in the lift here, and then you're going to go over to the reception. We're going to go up to the top floor. We're going to have some drink and some entertainment and some chat and some networking, and it's a chance, I think, to digest, which I'm not going to attempt to do now, so many amazing comments and opportunities for us all to learn. Share that together, think about how we can take that back to our own organisations and do more with it. We'll be back in the morning at 9 o'clock. So at 9 o'clock we'll be kicking off again. I'm going to be meeting Jessica from Microsoft, talking about accessibility at Microsoft. And we're also going to be talking about the survey that we ran recently. And right at the end there, I was just thinking about this. We ran a survey recently, about 300 or 400 people filled it in across accessibility. I think there are two types of accessibility organisations. I want you to think about which one you're in. You're either a laggard and your leadership is not really getting this stuff, or you're a leader and they've really got it and you're taking off. And I think that gap is widening. That's what our research is showing, that more people who are in that leadership role are taking on that leadership and magnifying, and it's iterative, it happens quicker. The laggards are still sitting there going, why is this important to me? And the others are going across at the other side of the horizon. So if you're in one of those organisations where you're on one side or the other of that coin, talk about it upstairs and find out what's happening on the other side of the coin and how you can either help the person who's in the laggards or take advantage from the laggard point of view, learn from the leaders and learn how you can make your organisation just accelerate that a little bit more. But thank you so much for ending a brilliant day, and we'll see you upstairs.